Hello everybody, I'm Evan Kamikow and welcome to the Toss Up. With all of college and professional sports back, there is no better place to be right now than to break it all down here. Each week, join myself and an expert-line panel dissect the latest sports news from some of the nation's most elite college programs here in Bloomington to the biggest stadiums and stages around the world. Stick around because we have a great show for you coming up on the Toss Up. As the always booed Roger Goodell says every year, the NFL draft is officially open and the first team is on the clock. Well, the actual draft is not for another few days. Now is as good of a time as any to talk about it. On today's action-packed show, we are talking all things 2021 NFL draft. There are a ton of storylines for this year's draft in Cleveland. Whether it's Trevor Lawrence projected to go to Jacksonville with the first overall pick, 4 other quarterbacks projected to go within the top 10, a deep pool of wide receivers to choose from, or where your favorite former Indiana Hoosier will be drafted to, there is plenty to discuss. We have an action-packed show today with our first ever toss-up mock draft featuring Anthony McClain, and IUSTV reporter Gwen Parks joins us later on the Hoosiers to know before the draft. But stick around for that. For now, I'd like to welcome to the IUSTV Sports co-director Mike Moskaluk and IUSTV Sports reporter Carlo Barone to the panel. Mike, Carlo, let's toss up some NFL draft.
Let's do it. I'm excited.
Let's do it.
All right, so Mike, we'll start with you. Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson are the top 2 quarterbacks right now in this draft. Well, I don't believe Zach Wilson is a top 2 quarterback. He still is by a lot of insiders at ESPN and all these stations. Do you think they're destined to go 1 and 2 overall?
I mean, at this point, it seems that's just what's going to happen. Trevor Lawrence, pretty much since his first snaps at Clemson, it's been determined that the 2021 NFL draft would begin with his name being called. For the longest time, everyone thought Justin Fields, number 2, no doubter. But Zach Wilson, really, this year, incredible season out with BYU in the West, and put on a show to the point where it seems like everyone's just penciled him in for number 2. So, I mean, crazier things have happened, but it seems like it's just going to go chalk at the top, yeah.
I'd have to agree with Mike because, Trevor Lawrence has been projected number 1 overall for a couple of years now, and Zach Wilson's stock has grown a lot, especially over the last year, so I think they're easily 1 and 2. Trevor Lawrence is probably the best quarterback we've seen in a long time, prospect-wise, so I think he's going 1. Wilson is a little more not assuring at 2, but I think he's going to go 2 just because of all the hype around him recently. So, yeah, I think they're going to go 1-2.
And I think the crazy thing about these 2 quarterbacks is that the fact that the third quarterback, Justin Fields, he outdueled Trevor Lawrence in the college football playoff when Clemson and Ohio State played each other. So I don't fully get why people are putting Zach Wilson. I think they're looking at his athleticism. And it could be very similar to like a Mitch Trubisky type deal where it's like, oh, he's the best athlete, he should go 2. So, carrying off of that, Carlo, will the other 3 quarterbacks, you have Justin Fields, who we've already talked about, Mac Jones, and Trey Lance, are they going to go in the top 5?
I don't think they're all going to go top 5. That's a lot of quarterbacks for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I think Fields is going to go at number 3, but a lot of people also have Mac Jones. I don't think they're going to go all top 5, but top 15, top 10 is definitely a realistic number for me.
Yeah, I think, like Carlos said, it's hard to say top 5 are QBs, but the way the NFL has been drafting recently, the value put on young quarterbacks is so extreme because there's such a big difference in the pay scale between quarterbacks and other positions now where you get that quarterback on that rookie deal, you get 5 years. That extra 5th year, teams are loving it because then you wait another year for paying your QB. You can pay other guys. So I do think we're going to see those 5 in the top 10. Top 5, all 5 being QBs is a bit of a stretch, but I think we'll see at least 2 more of them in the top 5, to make it 4.
Yeah, and especially because, the Atlanta's sitting with the 4 pick. They don't need a quarterback, but they can very easily draft a quarterback to get Matt Ryan a replacement down the line. And then you have Cincinnati at number 5. But we'll talk about Cincinnati in a second. What teams, Mike, do you see trading up to the top 10?
A lot of people want to put the Patriots there. They think Belichick's going to go up and get a QB, maybe even the QB of his choice. They think he'll go high. But if you look at how Belichick really drafts and treats the draft, he's never been that guy to trade up for someone. He's even the exact opposite. He's willing to trade down, gain extra picks, maybe get a guy other guys aren't valuing as much. And so my team personally is the Denver Broncos. They have a GM in John Elway who it seems every year he has to take at least one QB. It's like he has it written down on his notes for the draft, like rule number 1, draft a QB. And then he can just check it off every year, be like, boom, done. Maybe this guy's the answer. So I think Denver really is in a situation now. They've built up the rest of their team. They're like, all we need is this new young QB. And I think they're going to try and trade up, swing for the fences, maybe even get Atlanta's pick at number 4 and try and take whoever's left.
Mm-hmm. I could definitely see New England, as what he just said. I think New England could definitely trade in the top 10. I mean, they were so aggressive in free agency this year, signing a bunch of people, spending more money they've ever spent in one offseason. So them trading up, especially if there's a slide on quarterbacks where it goes 1, 2, and 3, I mean, they might hit the panic button. So I could definitely see New England trading up and getting, 4, 5, or 6, getting like Mac Jones, Justin Fields, or Trey Lance at in the top 10. Yeah, I could definitely see them.
Yeah, and I think what's so interesting about this is it's pretty much certain that quarterbacks are going to go 1, 2, and 3. As San Francisco traded up from 12 to 3, it seems like they're going to go with Mac Jones or Justin Fields. But at number 4, you have Atlanta, who's an older team, and that they could trade down because they have Matt Ryan. And a team like New England, I completely agree. They're my number 1 team to trade up into the top 10. My number 2 is the Bears. I think realistically, Ryan Pace needs to make a move for that team. They need a quarterback. They might not have the luxury to wait to the second round. I also saw people saying that the Bears might draft Davis Mills from Stanford with the 20th overall pick, which in my opinion, if you're going to draft the number 6 quarterback 20 overall instead of getting other guys, might as well take your shot and try to trade up. But with the number 5 pick is the Cincinnati Bengals. Carlo, who do you think the Bengals are going to go with? You think they're going to take a wide receiver like Joe Burrow's been saying that they are, or an offensive lineman in Penei Sewell?
I look at the Bengals and I think they are going to draft Jamar Chase at number 5. However, they should go offensive line, but at the end of the day, Burrow's in their ear. I think the Bengals are going to take Chase. I mean, Chase had arguably a better season than Justin Jefferson, and you saw what he did last year. So Chase's upside is just insane, and you're putting him with this college quarterback. I think it's destined to happen.
I think Chase is probably the easy answer because of what Carlos said. I mean, he had 1,780 yards as a sophomore with 20 touchdowns, which is kind of ridiculous. I mean, everyone on LSU had great numbers that year, but he won the Blitnikoff as the best college wide receiver as a sophomore, which is like unheard of. So to me, I do think Jamar Chase is probably the play that they go for there. But honestly, if I were to choose, it wouldn't be between Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell for me. It'd be between Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts. 2 years ago, they took Jonah Conklin, a left tackle out of Alabama. I think it was 11th or 12th overall. And he's actually played really well in the snaps he got last year. He was injured in 2019-2020, sorry. So he didn't play 2 years ago when he first got drafted. But ever since then, he's been solid. I think they need another pass catcher for Burrow, and you can get line in the second and third round. So I think it's either Jamar Chase or I would go Kyle Pitts even before Penei Sewell.
And honestly, before we really talked before the show, I was all Penei Sewell for the Bengals. I thought Joe Burrow's knee, in the new stripes, their promo video for their new jerseys, you can see that he had a huge scar on his knee after tearing his ACL last season. I was like, you got to get Sewell. He's a generational talent. But you made a great point earlier, was that they'd have to move that lineman to the other side or Sewell to the other side, which could, cause a lot of monetary issues down the line. So I'd agree. I think it's either going to be Pitts or Jamar Chase. But you also have to remember, Devontae Smith won the Heisman. He is in that discussion. So who would you take first, Carlo? Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, or Jalen Waddle?
I'm going to have to stick with Chase here just because he had a great year in 2019 and then obviously opted out in 2020. But he has a year, what the other guys don't have is a year off where no injuries, no wear and tear in his body. So he's a fresh product about to go to the NFL. I mean, his route running skills, his touchdowns, he is so NFL ready that I don't think the Bengals are going to pass up on number 5.
Now, if you were to ask me who do I think might be the best in 5 years, I'd probably answer, honestly, Jalen Waddle, just because he can return, he can play in the slot, he can play on the outside. You can line him up in the backfield if you really want to. I would compare him as like a Tyreek Hill, Devin Hester kind of combo, where he can return, but he can also be your best receiver. Now, that all being said, Jamar Chase is a prototypical NFL number 1. He's got the size, he's got the physicality, he makes the catches in the air. I really don't see how he isn't the number one wide receiver taken. But I think Jalen Waddle, because of his injury, maybe because Devontae Smith won the Heisman, so he takes a little bit of the shine away. But I think Jalen Waddle's starting to get slept on, where it's close between him and Chase, to be honest with you, in my books.
And the Bengals, it wouldn't be a horrible idea to take Pitts. I know that, we talked about it. It's not the three I named when I was asking you guys, but out of those three, I'm torn because, Devonta Smith is the Heisman winner. He's the number one player in college football last year. How do you not take that player? Especially because Jamar Chase didn't play this season. You haven't seen him in over a year on the field. Yeah, he looked great in the national championship game, but that might not translate a year and a half later since he's seen action at LSU.
I think it is tough because you look at Devontae Smith. He's got the wow on every play, right? But then you look at his numbers. He's 5'10". Well, he's 175. Now, you get a linebacker coming hard off the edge and running into him in full speed. There are a lot of concerns. There's a reason that he's not even being talked about top 10 by some guys, and it's because of the size, unfortunately. It's just part of the NFL.
But if he, excuse me.
No, go ahead. But I was just going to say, the reason that I love Kyle Pitts so much as a prospect is he's like 6'4", 6'5", 200-something pounds, but he also runs the 4.5 40. He's got that speed, and I think really that's why you see guys like him, Jamar Chase, these bigger type receivers just being a bit higher, because Devontae Smith might be the best out of all of them. Don't get me wrong. In terms of pure skill, he might be number one. But when it comes to the NFL, they like to draft guys they know they can plug in and play. And people look at him, and I think they worry, and they go, with his size, like, what happens if he twists a knee out there? What happens if we have a linebacker or a lineman land on his leg? Crazier things have happened.
Absolutely. Anything else to add, Carlo?
I mean, I would agree. After the national championship, Smith was projected like top 5, and then slowly his stock has just kind of gone back into the lower end of the top 10 teens area. But Smith, yeah, he needs to get his size up, I think. Like he said, like if he gets hit really hard, like he's definitely prone to bigger hits than other guys. But his route running skills and just his play on the field, I think says a lot. Personally, I would take him in the top 15, but
I think there's no question he goes top 15. I see a perfect spot for him as the Giants. He could be the number 2 receiver there behind Kenny Galladay, and that'd be perfect. Now, let's move away from offense. Let's talk about defense. Carlo, who do you believe will be the first defensive player drafted?
I think Micah Parsons out of Penn State. He's a great edge rusher and also like a great leader for the defense. And for a young Giants secondary and defense in general, I feel like he would be a great aid to the O-line and the linebacking core. He can command everyone, just like be the quarterback essentially of the defense. He's also a phenomenal edge rusher that will give them more pass rushing in 2021.
I like the Micah Parsons pick. He is a really good edge rusher. However, I mean, the concerns with him are he's not as great in coverage, which for an outside linebacker, a lot of these outside linebackers, I mean, the way teams line up, they'll line up in these empty sets or they'll line up with 4 wide receivers. And these outside linebackers are getting asked to cover these slot receivers, these really quick inside guys. And I see some concern there. And the only reason I say that he won't go as the top defensive player is I think teams worry about that. So I'm going to go Patrick Surtain, the second out of Alabama. It's a chalk pick, but teams love in this day and age a shutdown corner who can play physical on wide receivers. With how much passing there is in the NFL, I think someone's going to see this prototypical number 1 corner sitting there, and they're just going to try and jump on him in the top 10.
So where does Surtain and Micah Parsons go? What teams will they be on? Who's going to draft the first defensive player this year?
I think the Giants, like I said. I don't know what you.
I could see Giants. Really, for me, I'm looking at, I think Detroit's always a possibility. They like to take defensive players early because they seem to find value with running backs and wide receivers late. But realistically, I think it's the Dallas Cowboys. They're picking in the top 10 100% because their defense has failed them in like maybe at least 8 of their games last season. I mean, Evan, you're a Bears fan. You remember, like, they have had so many games where they blew leads simply because they just could not stop other teams from scoring. I think Dallas is going to be like, hey, listen, we need a defensive player early just to help our guys out back there.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd say either the Lions or really the Cowboys as well. And then maybe you wouldn't be looking until the 15, 16, 17 for the next defensive player because it is such an offensive-heavy draft. So, guys, we're going to keep you guys in studio, and we will come right back to you guys. And I'd like to introduce our NFL Draft Insider, Anthony McClain, to show for our Toss Up Mock Draft 1.0. Anthony, now you're on the clock.
Thanks, Evan. Draft day is less than 1 week away. an event where mediocre teams can become Super Bowl contenders and teams on the cusp of success could be set back multiple years from playoff contention in only a span of 3 days. I'm Anthony McClain, here to give my personal top picks in this upcoming NFL draft. First off the board, we got a no-brainer Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is a 1 in every 10-year prospect. The Jaguars would be very sorry if they missed on him. Second off the board, we got Zach Wilson, quarterback out of BYU. Zach Wilson's been getting compared to Aaron Rodgers, which would justify his stock skyrocketing all the way up to 2. Then we got Mac Jones out of Alabama. Mac Jones may arguably not be the best quarterback in this draft, but he could fit the scheme for the San Francisco 49ers very well. Coming in at number 4, we have our first trade, the New England Patriots trading up to get Justin Fields. Justin Fields showed a lot of physical toughness in this previous season, which could definitely set the New England Patriots up for success again. And then we got Jamar Chase, wide receiver out of LSU. Jamar Chase used to play with Joe Burrow back in LSU, so it would make sense why they would want to get their man for the offensive side of the ball. Pairing him up with T. Higgins and all those other weapons would definitely be dangerous on the field. Coming in at number 7, number 6, we got Kyle Pitts, tight end out of Florida, going to the Miami Dolphins. Miami would need another tight end to go pair up with Gesicki to make Tua a much more polished quarterback and give him more weapons to throw on the field. Then we got Micah Parsons, my favorite linebacker coming out of this draft, to bolster that weak linebacking core in Detroit. Then we got Penei Sewell going to the Carolina Panthers. They got their quarterback in free agency. Now it's time to get his protection. Then coming in at number 9, which I would say is the riskiest trade or the riskiest pick actually in this draft, at least in the top 10, because Trey Lance has a lot of upside, but his ceiling is super high, but his floor is actually pretty low. So they might need to see where that goes. And then we got Patrick Surtain II, defensive back out of Alabama. They need to bolster up that weak secondary, so it makes sense why they would get that shutdown corner at number 10. And then we got Travis Etienne, who is my late round draft steal. If the Bills get a running back and improve that offense, which was lacking in running game last year in the playoffs, they could definitely be the favorite for this upcoming 2021 NFL season. Coming up after the break, Gwen Parks joins the show to discuss where your favorite Hoosiers are projected to be drafted. Then Evan, Mike, and Carlo are back on the panel with more NFL draft discussion. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. After a historic season for IU football, it's time for some of the guys to leave IU and enter the NFL draft. Joining the show to update all the Hoosier fans out there on where their favorite former Hoosiers could get drafted is our own Gwen Parks. Gwen, you're on the clock.
Thanks, Evan. First up, wide receiver Whop Phillier announced in January his intentions to enter the NFL draft. Whop is a smart receiver with the speed to get behind defenses to make that big play. That speed and clean routes also allow him to navigate the middle of the field and find separation within the defense. Once Whop has the ball in hand, he has the ability to create yardage after the catch. With those skills, Whop will have plenty of teams looking to draft him, like the Buccaneers, Chiefs, Bills, Packers, or any team looking for the all-around type prototype receiver. Next, we've got running back Stevie Scott, who will be entering the NFL draft after 3 impressive seasons with the Hoosiers, and was one of the 3 Indiana players to receive an invite to the NFL Combine. Scott is a big and quick running back with solid hands and is known as a formidable pass protector. Most draft projections have Scott being a late-round draft pick or an undrafted free agent, but he would be a great pickup for any team looking for an all-around running back. Last but not least, we have safety Jamar Johnson, who also chose to forgo his remaining eligibility with the Hoosiers and enter the 2021 draft. Johnson is an underrated safety with explosive closing speed and is very solid in deep coverage. His run defense and pass coverage skills make him a versatile prospect for any team that leads towards a zone defense. Some teams that are in need of a Johnson's talents include the Cowboys, Raiders, Dolphins, and Vikings. Could Johnson become the next Indiana defensive back to be drafted to the NFL since 2010? We'll have to wait and see. Evan, back to you.
Thanks, Gwen. We are back on the panel with Mike Moskaluk and Carlo Barone for more NFL draft talk. Guys, you ready to get back to it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so Carlo, what IU player do you think will be drafted first?
I think it's going to be Jamar Johnson. He's projected a mid-round pick. He led a great IU secondary this year. That was one of the best defenses in all college football. So his speed and athleticism, I think, puts him in a third or fourth round pick, and definitely safety-needy teams will draft him. Yeah, that's who I have as the first Hoosier off the board.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to agree. Jamar Johnson most likely is going day 2. I mean, he can play either safety position you want. He can be a rover. He can play up in the box. He can play as a slot defender if you want. He played a lot of that nickel corner this year. He makes a lot of the calls, the adjustments back there, and he really seems to read plays well. So you'll see him go day 2. But in terms of some other Hoosiers, maybe later in the draft, I think you'll see Whop Phillier go sometime on day 3. He's really been hurt by how many great slot receivers there are at the top of the draft with Elijah Moore, Rondell Moore, Jalen Darden, Jalen Waddle. It's a run on slot receivers this year, which makes it a little bit more challenging for Whop. And then you got Jerome Johnson at defensive tackle. This is a really weak year for the defensive line in general. So in general, it always helps you out when there's not as many guys you're competing with for a draft spot. So I'd have to say if it's not Jamar Johnson for some unforeseen reason, probably look at Whop and then Jerome Johnson if neither one of those.
Yeah, there's not much disagreeing with me on your guys' points. Johnson is a top 80 pick projected to be. He's, I believe the 79th best prospect. So, that's a late second round, early third round pick. And, whoever's going to get him, they're going to get a great defensive back. I see Whop, if you want my actual prediction for Whop Phillier, 5th round to the Packers. I've been saying this since probably October that Whop will go in the 5th round. Like you said, there's a lot. It's such a deep wide receiver year that hurts Whop big time. And, Johnson, the defensive tackle, would probably be the last one. So, what late first-round pick, Mike, are people sleeping on?
There's a couple for me, honestly. I really think a lot of people have sort of gone on this run of, quarterbacks have got to go in the first round and all that. And so you'll see people be like, oh, maybe Davis Mills is a late first-rounder we're sleeping on. To me, that's a little bit silly. I think really in terms of, if we're talking late first round, it's got to be my guy Jason Owa out of Penn State. I mean, you have a defensive end who runs a 4.36 40 at his pro day. I mean, the stats might not be there. I think he only had a handful of sacks at most this year. But the amount of pressures he would get were there. So it's one of those where you see him and you go, if only he could have someone coach him up, he could become an absolute freak. So I think I got to go Jason Owa.
I'm going Rondell Moore. Obviously, you went to Purdue and, Purdue, but I think Rondell Moore is a very speedy guy and great out the slot. So I think him as a late, top or bottom 5 pick in the first round, he's great. I could see him on Green Bay, for example. They're picking at 29, or even the Chiefs, honestly, because they just lost their wide receiver. So, but I think Moore out of the slot is just going to be a great pick that people are sleeping on.
Yeah, I think Moore's going to be great. Kadarius Toney, we haven't said that name yet. Wide receiver out of Florida. He could be a good sleeper. But my actual sleeper would probably be ETN late in the first round. I think whoever scoops him up in Anthony's mock draft, it was Buffalo. And I really like that pick for the Bills because their run game, as Anthony said, has been kind of depleted over the last couple of years. And last year, they really relied on Josh Allen to move out of the pocket and to throw the ball 50 times in a game. So if you give the Bills a running back like that, man, that team could be dangerous next year.
Well, I don't hate that pick. The Bills are a big analytics team, and they know in the NFL the most replaceable position there is a running back. And to be honest with you, in my opinion, I don't even think Etienne is even a top 2 running back in this class, to be honest with you. If you had to ask me, I got Javonte Williams at a UNC, and then Najee Harris, and then Travis Etienne. And really, part of the only reason I say that is you look at an Etienne or you look at a Najee Harris, their last 3 or so years, they've only run behind a top 25 line in all of college football. That's all they know. All they know is open lanes. All they know is great blocking. And then you look at a guy like Javonte Williams, top 100 line. So I don't know. I see a running back maybe late first round, but I'm hoping this is the year teams are smart and we do not see any running backs in the first round.
So, Mike, I'll stick with you for this next question. Who is your favorite player that is not projected to be drafted on day one?
Okay. I mean, I love some of the late round sleepers. That's one of my favorite parts of the draft is you see all these guys and you're like, man, if my team gets him in the 5th round, I'm going to say we won the draft. But for me, it's probably Chaz Surratt, the linebacker out of UNC. And it's only really because of how valuable linebackers have become in the NFL. You need your secondary to be able to cover, obviously. But linebackers have so many more pass coverage assignments, so many blitz assignments. When you face a good O-line, you need the extra blitzers. So they're asked to do a lot. And Chaz Surratt is kind of jack of all trades. You need him to cover edge to edge. He can do that. You need him to line up on a running back, slot receiver, whatever. You need him to blitz. He can do that. I think he is someone, maybe you don't get the attention because you're not at a blue blood, but I think Chaz Surratt, you could get something special with him on day 2.
It's funny that we were just talking about running backs because I think Najee Harris out of Alabama is definitely – I was shocked when I was looking at mock drafts that he was projected like a late first round, like 2nd round. I think he's going to be the biggest sleeper in the first – or the beginning of the 2nd round, rather. I mean, you look at all the Alabama running backs in the NFL. They've all – or a lot of them have been successful. They're one of the top college programs that produce running backs that go to the next level. So I think him being like close first, 2nd rounder, I think that's a steal. I think he's going to have a great career and definitely has a lot of upside.
Yeah, I'll take on this one Elijah Moore, wide receiver from Ole Miss, the Rebels. You know, we saw him in the game when in the bowl game against Indiana. And
He didn't play.
He didn't play, excuse me. I thought we saw him.
Sat
we did
out
not.
for the draft.
Yeah, he sat out for the draft. He is a monster. This is the same place that produced DK Metcalf. DK got drafted in the 3rd or 4th round, and he's a monster right now. Moore is very similar, body type as DK. So wherever he goes, I think he'll be very successful.
Yeah, he's a freak. He's like, I want to say he's 5'9", 5'10", so most likely a slot receiver, but he's one of the fastest players I've probably seen. I mean, I love Elijah Moore. He's up there for me. And if I had to throw another one out there for you, Trey Sermon out of Ohio State. I mean, he only came on at the end of the year, but there's something to be said for running backs who will do more with less carries. And he had some games where he only touched the ball like 8 or 9 times and racked up 100 yards. And I know it's behind another good O-line in Ohio State, but you just watch a guy have explosive games at the end of a year like that. I mean, his game against Northwestern, ridiculous. His game against Clemson, ridiculous. Trey Sermon, I think he'll go 4th or 5th round, and whoever gets him, I think he might even be their starter.
Carlo, anyone to add?
Honestly, I was going to say Trey Sermon too. Mike kind of took that. But, yeah, running back out of Ohio State, again, you have Ezekiel Elliott at the next level. I think it's going to translate well. If you look at Ohio State, how they play, and their pass running backs. So I was going to say Trey Sermon for another sleeper in the late or 1st, 2nd round, actually.
So we'll stick with the 2nd, 3rd, and later. What quarterbacks do you see falling in the 2nd round, and who could they potentially go to?
I've seen a lot of drafts say Davis Mills out of Stanford. I think he had a pretty good year, but he's in a very heavy QB class that's going to be a lot of first-rounders and stuff. So he kind of gets the doubt of that. But I think there's still a lot of value in quarterbacks on day 2 or day 3, especially in this draft, just because of how deep it is. So Davis Mills out of Stanford, I feel like, I don't say he could play this year, but maybe sit out 1 year, and then he could be a starter for a team.
Yeah, Davis Mills, he's been flying up the draft boards because everyone loves his cannon arm. But, I mean, he does struggle with the efficiency, with the accuracy. So he's one of those guys exactly right. They're like, maybe we can sit him for a year to learn. But I got to go Jamie Newman. Now, he didn't even play this last year, mind you. He's one of the sit-out guys. But the year before that, he played at Wake Forest, threw for over 2,000 yards, 25 TDs, and led Wake Forest to an 8-5 record that they had no business getting to. He transferred to Georgia this offseason and then ended up sitting out. But so that's worrying teams, and he was going to go late 1st round last year. They had been talking about him maybe late 1st round, early 2nd round because of the year he had. Now with the sit-out year, he's kind of fallen. People are like, does he still have it? He hasn't really played for a year. I think whoever gets him, I think it'll probably be day 3. They might be in for a surprise because he's a guy, he just needs a little bit of coaching. He's got the raw talent there.
So my guy, which neither of you mentioned, which I'm a little shocked about, would be Kellen Mond, quarterback from Mississippi State. He's big, he's athletic. Dak Prescott went to Mississippi State and has been very successful on the Cowboys. So I think Mond can very much follow that. So final question to you guys. Mike, we'll start with you. Which draftee will have the best NFL career?
You know, it's a tough one because there's so many guys here. Everyone wants to say Trevor Lawrence. I don't even know that Trevor Lawrence is going to have the best career the QB's taken. It seems like, I don't know, everyone wants to say that. I'm going to go Kyle Pitts. I think he's truly the most gifted player in the draft. And he's a guy, he has the frame. He has sort of all the makings of a legit pro where you can step in and play. I'll take the known quantity. I'll go Kyle Pitts as the best one.
I'm going to go with the chalk here. I think it's going to be Trevor Lawrence. I feel like he's a guy that can step in right for Jacksonville, lead them to a couple more wins than they're supposed to get this year with that roster. So I think Lawrence, I think he's a Pro Bowler within the next couple of years. Personally, he's very NFL ready. You've seen him make throws all of college. He's been projected the first overall pick for a couple of years now. So, I mean, it's not the great answer, but I think he's going to have the best career.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Micah Parsons, the linebacker out of Penn State. I think if you put him in the right system, you know, it's looking like Detroit is going to take him at 7, and I think that he's a really good linebacker for a Detroit team that is desperate for a linebacker. New head coach Campbell.
Yep,
Dan Campbell, thank you.
He wants to bite people's
he
legs
wants to
off.
bite
That's the
people's
perfect
legs
guy.
off and absolutely destroy. So Mike and Carlo, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. That does it for the show this week. Be sure to continue the discussion on our Instagram page at IUSTV Sports and our Twitter page at IUSTV Sports. We are always looking for ways to improve the show, so please feel free to ask any questions you might have or suggestions for future episodes. Everyone stay safe. Thank you for watching at home. And as always, toss it up, find out if we'll catch it, and we'll see you next week.